Hey, it's Jack, and this video is called How Do I Get My Partner to Meet My Needs? All right, we're going to be talking about needs. Don't go anywhere, we're just about to get started. But before we do, I want to invite you, if you haven't, click the first link beneath this video and download the He's Your Guy checklist. It's 9 quick points you can run any guy through for you to work out, is this something that might become an actual relationship that I can invest in? So click the first link beneath this video, grab the He's Your Guy checklist. All right, let's get needy and talk about our needs and how do we get them met. So just straight off the bat, let's acknowledge that we all have needs. Number one, right? So for a lot of us, we don't like neediness, right? And sometimes we perceive the neediness over there. Like, I don't like needy people. I don't like that needy guy. And sometimes that can be pointing to a relationship with neediness that we actually need to look at ourselves, right? Where we might need to acknowledge that we're not quite as self-reliant as we sometimes take ourselves to be. Self-reliance is a great quality, but self-reliance, absent the ability to lean in and depend on other people, isn't the whole enchilada, right? Sometimes we don't like neediness because it's actually the needy parts of ourselves that we've rejected, so we kind of keep them out of view, or we haven't come into real relationship with them. So if we just accept, number one, we all have needs. Number two, we're all complex, right? We're a matrix of different needs at different times, right? And this can have different facets. We can have, emotional needs. We have physical needs. We have intimacy needs, sexual needs. The list kind of goes on, right? So we're all this sort of slightly complex web of needs that we have, which include needs that we're good at getting met ourselves and needs that we're not. And for most of us, may also include chronically undermet needs, right? Which might mean our whole life we've had some needs that haven't been met, or we might have had needs that were particularly not met in childhood and that we either went quiet on, or we just have this constant sort of longing and frustration that I have this need that I don't know how to get met, right? So I'm just kind of laying a little bit of a foundation for us here as we approach this conversation. If we can acknowledge that we're all needy in some ways and that that's healthy, and if we can also acknowledge that we are complex with our needs and we're not obvious to another person, right? Discerning our needs for ourselves can sometimes be difficult enough, let alone imagining that that person over there is actually going to know what we need. Right? So the third thing I just want to lay down here is we have to take some responsibility for noticing what we need and being able to reveal and communicate it. Now, this isn't easy, right? I hold my hand up. I don't think I've historically been great at this. It's not sometimes easy to specifically lay down what it is you need, particularly, and here's the kind of irony in this, if you think it's something that should be sort of obvious, right? It should just be obvious not to put the towel on the bed, right? Or it should just be obvious that when the laundry basket's full, we should do the laundry. Or it should be obvious that if the milk is finished, that you're going to go buy it, right? Or it should be obvious that I need you to sit down and listen to me, or I need you to just hold my hand, or it should be obvious that you fill in the blanks, right? Anytime we have a sense that it should be obvious, I want you to get really curious about how obvious is it actually, and have you ever laid it down consistently and obviously? Have you ever consistently and obviously made this need known and made it known how you would like it to be met? Not from a place of blame and threat, but from a place of vulnerability. And that's sometimes hard, right? If you're like a lot of us, this chronically undermet need, or even just a need that hasn't been met, at some point we might be liable to put our foot down or blow up because we've actually been holding back from expressing that, hey, there's a need that I haven't had met, and it's too painful to be with the vulnerability of that, so we come over the top with our anger and our frustration. That's not to say that there might not be legitimate anger and frustration there, but there's also, this is the piece, there's also normally a little vulnerable one, right? Who's like, hey, I have a need and I feel a bit helpless, or I feel overwhelmed, or I feel like I shouldn't have it, or I have some shame around it. Like, there's a whole other layer that's going on there that I want to encourage you to be in touch with. So how do you get your partner to meet your needs? Well, if you come from a place where ultimately I'm going to be responsible for my needs, right? So there's a subset of my needs that you might be able to meet. And I say might because you and I could be in partnership and have the best intention of wanting to meet each other's needs, but whether we actually can that is a different thing, right? So part of our ongoing ability to be in relationship is whether we can do this for each other. If we have no desire to do it for each other, then we shouldn't be in relationship. We might have a desire, but we actually don't have the ability, right? I might not be able to do the thing that you need me to do, or I might not be able to do it in the way that to you feels loving and caring or attuned. Maybe I can learn over time. Maybe I actually can't do that thing, right? If your need is, I need someone to go travel the world as an adventure buddy, and you're with someone for whom getting on the plane is just a really big deal, and maybe we can go on holiday once, twice a year max, but I'm not going to be going to places that are far-fetched. I just might not be able to meet that need to be your travel buddy, right? Ideally, maybe we work that out sooner than later, but there's going to be more subtle examples of that exist for all of us in relationships. So I'm laying down the ground to say that if I can acknowledge I have needs, you have needs. I'm complex, you're complex. I have a responsibility to take care of my needs. You have a responsibility to take care of your needs. I have a responsibility to take care of your needs as well, right? If I'm being a good partner, I'm not just over here with my needs. I do want to take care of your needs. But if you also have a responsibility for that, we're already doing better. Now, if you can articulate it and it can land in my reality that you are asking me to meet a particular need, and perhaps ideally you're even giving me the vehicle, right? Because that makes it even more obvious. If you say I have a need for adventure, okay, for me, reading a romance novel might be adventurous. If actually for you, adventure means, we need to kind of go bungee jumping and zip lining, it would be good if I could know that, right? So we want maximum flexibility, right? Giving me all the vehicle choices. Could be kayaking, could be zip lining, could be ATVing, could be, spending time with that crazy aunt of yours. It could be all sorts of things. So give me the biggest menu you can, but also the clarity that this is the thing. Like if this thing happened, then that need, for now at least, would be met, right? So do you and I have shared reality that you are, one, making a request, and two, there is a specific request on the table, right? A lot of times, and again, I've probably been guilty of this myself a lot in the past, if you just froze the video, so to speak, and invited a third party in, right, coach, therapist, or observer, it's like maybe that's not even happening. Maybe there isn't that mutual clarity, right? We almost just want to have one partner be quiet and have the other partner speak and say, hey, what are you actually being asked for here? Do you hear a specific request, right? Step two then is, am I a yes or no to trying to meet that request, right? So we're trying to get a specific buy-in from our partner that, hey, yeah, I am actually a yes to ziplining, and I'm willing to book a time with you for us to explore how we would make that happen, right? Or I'm actually willing to go book that in the next month. Something that looks like a commitment to action. But we don't want to rush that. We don't want to assume that our partner has a commitment to action when actually they're saying, okay, yeah, I hear you, but I'm not actually feeling committed to meet that need, right? Maybe they actually need a little bit of time to reflect. That's fine. It's just at some point we want to get back into some kind of shared reality about, hey, that thing that we were talking about, I'm curious, where do we stand with that? And again, if I can do this from a place of centeredness, I'm not having to put something on you, I can be connected to myself and my experience, I don't need to make you wrong, I just actually want to be in reality with you, right? It might be vulnerable for me to find out, you know what, you don't have any interest or desire to book ziplining for us, that is just what it is. And maybe that's a deal breaker for me, right? Or maybe there's some kind of negotiated compromise that could happen here. Like, if I'm honest, I'm not that psyched about doing the ziplining, but I will do it. And what would also feel good for me is, would you be willing to come to a party with me that I know you're not so psyched about, but that would actually work for me. Like, we're both kind of doing a little bit of sacrifice, or we're both kind of leaning into something that's not really our strong suit. So you probably get the theme here, right? It's sort of clarity, specificity, and revealing experience, and being willing to be in relationships. I'm not actually in an orientation that you should want to do this. It's actually okay sometimes in relationship to take on doing things that you wouldn't ordinarily want to do, right? I think that's part of our social instinct and our ability to be flexible with one another. But I do actually want to know if this is something that you're interested to engage with me, so I don't have to be in this constant frustration of, oh my God, I wish you were, combing my hair, but you actually never comb it, right? Or I wish you were giving me a massage, or I wish you were cooking me dinner once a week, or, Fill in the blanks here. Is there some gray territory between what's a need and what's a desire? Probably, right? If it's occurring to you enough and it's problematic enough, we can maybe just for the moment err on the side of saying, yeah, that's probably a need. And what also are you doing to make sure that you might have some other opportunities to meet it, right? So it's not all just being put over on your partner. It's like, yeah, I'm taking some responsibility for this. And if I really notice that either they don't want to because we've talked about it, or we talked about it and then they don't follow through, I'm actually still going to be responsible for meeting this need, right? So I'm going to take some action to make sure I'm meeting it as much as I can. Now, are there certain needs that can only get met in partnership relationship? Yeah, probably, right? Some of our attachment needs, as much work as I do on being securely attached to myself and the world, it's going to be helpful if I can be in an actual secure attachment with my partner. So, you know, there may almost be a sort of a hierarchy of things that is most important that the relationship can show up for, and then some other stuff that's perhaps a little bit more optional, right? Imagine for a moment that you were rooting for your partner to be able to meet your need, right? So you were going to make it as easy as possible for them to win, right? So if that is actually, it could just be a 5-minute massage, and it doesn't even have to be at a specific time. It could just be any time in the next week. That might be a little bit easier for them, right? We start small with training wheels, and we can build up. Another good thing to check in on, right, is how are you doing vis-a-vis them? How much are you meeting their needs? And what I mean by this specifically is not how much do you think you're meeting their needs, how much do they think that you're meeting their needs, right? So we want to be wary of this subjectification that if you've listened to me before, you know I talk about, which is where I imagine, perhaps because I'm doing all the things that I wish you were doing for me, I'm already doing them for you, I must be meeting your needs, but actually there's another human being over there, constellated differently, with a complex matrix of needs that you may or may not be able to discern. And here's the kicker. If you have some of the server, helper, mentor, empath energy, you may sometimes be quite sure, and there is a very true energy that you bring to this world of service. And sometimes you may be serving in a way that isn't actually attuned to what this person needs, right? So even if you're really good in that realm, right, that you think of yourself, and perhaps you even have an identity around I serve and I help, I just want to invite maximum curiosity. Like, what does this person, if they could just tell it to you straight and they didn't have to fear that you would be upset because maybe there's a thing that you've done that actually doesn't register so strongly in their world, like what is that true blueprint for them of how they feel met in their needs, right? And we can have exactly the same need and very different vehicles to meet it, right? So for you, emotional intimacy might be we're not talking and we're actually just holding one another, right, poignantly. For some people, if there's no language being exchanged, it doesn't feel intimate, right? So this can sometimes be where relationships complex, you know, or perhaps he's working really hard to clean the garage because he thinks that's what's showing love, right back into our love languages, when actually what you just need someone to sit down and gaze in your eyes lovingly and longingly, right? So this is where intimacy is difficult because we sometimes have to drop our own assumptions and our own scripts. Sometimes it's frustrating because we might have been putting a lot of effort in a thing that's not actually showing up in their bank account, and we need to have the clear-sightedness and humility to know that, rather than just keep doing the same thing and say, well, I meet all their needs, why don't they meet mine? Well, hang on a minute. If we pause the video, bring in the third party, do the confidential interviews, how are the needs being met, right? And it's best, if you can, is to have those conversations when you're in a decent place together and there's resource available to actually talk and to find out, right? So another tactic that you can use here is to basically give your partner kind of like an IOU, right? Basically, I'll do anything, just let me know, right? I don't mind if that's doing the dishes, getting the shopping, giving you a massage, buying something for you, spending time with your family. It can be whatever it is. It's almost like the more we can give that blank screen for them to project onto of what do they actually need or what are they drawn to, you're going to get a better picture of them, right? Because so often it's easy to be magnetized into our own love language. If I'm words of affirmation, I'm constantly affirming my partner, but is that showing up in their bank account? It might be showing up in my bank account that I imagine on their behalf, but is it showing up in the actual bank account? Do you sort of see this? It's like we kind of actually get down into the kind of nitty-gritty detail of this to try and find out what is it that we each need. Now, if there's something that you feel like you've asked a lot and it's not being met, then in a loving way, I would encourage you to take on that conversation. You know, something like, hey, in my experience, I've asked quite a lot for XYZ to happen. And in my experience, it hasn't happened, or it's only happened in this way. And I'm curious, do you see that the same way? Would you be willing to do XYZ in this particular way, right? So it's sort of like I draw attention to what's happening, but I base it out of my experience, because sometimes we're going to be in different experiences. You know, I might have had the experience that I'm working really hard to wash the dishes, but actually for you, if the dishes still have a few kind of hard bits of food stuck on them, that's not really doing the dishes. Doing the dishes is like a really thorough thing, right? Or it might be for you, doing the dishes isn't just that we wash the dishes, it's that we also dry them, we put them away, and we do that in a timely fashion, right? Maybe the way I grew up, that wasn't it. Maybe doing the dishes was just, you know, we leave it out to dry, and whenever it's dry, we just take it from there, right? And that's just the dishes, and that's probably not going to be your highest need, right? So when it comes to your more complex psycho-emotional needs, what is it that you actually need? And I'll give you just even a trivial example. Right? For some people to feel connected in a conversation, they just need to know that we are in the same conversation, right? You know, if I'm talking to you about politics, we're talking about politics. Or if I'm talking to you about how I had a bad day at work, we're kind of talking about that. For some people to be connected in conversation, they need to actually have a question like, hey, how you doing? How are you? Where are you right now? Just a little bit of a kind of touchy-feely check-in in the moment. And if that doesn't happen, all of this other conversation isn't really going to have us feel connected. Now, if you aren't wired that way, that might just seem like a superfluous question, like, hey, how's it going? Check it out, right? Another thing I talk about sometimes is pacing. If you're with someone that's a faster or slower pace, for them to feel connected, they may need that faster or slower pace. And if we never hit it, we might have 2 hours of conversation, but it doesn't actually hit the spot because it either wasn't as kind of stimulating as the other partner needs, or it wasn't as kind of dropped in as one of the partner needs, right? So I'm not trying to give you the picture that this has to be, you know, such a nuanced picture that it's so sort of micro complex, but that just that we want to lean in enough to the nuance that the need is actually met, right? You've had experiences where, let's say you're in a restaurant, right? And there's the server, and at the end of it, if I were interviewing you, were just like, yeah, that was great service. And we might not even be able to put our finger on it. We might say, yeah, you know, they came just the right amount, they weren't here too much, or they were very efficient, or when there was a problem, they dealt with it. And you've also had that experience of, where's the waiter, where's the waitress? They're never there when you need them, right? You're now a bit frustrated. They haven't even bought you the check, or they bought you the check, but they haven't come back to take your credit card. Relationships could sometimes be like that. What one person wants in one server, right? Which might just be genuineness, right? I'll even say that when I first came to spend time in the United States, I struggled a little bit with some of the service because it felt very much like a presentation that I wasn't asking for. I just wanted to know that you could take my order, that you would be punctual, that you would be courteous, and that's all I really need. I don't actually need to know too much about, you know, the history of the food. That's not so much of a thing for me. For some other people, they love that, right? That's the essence of what I'm trying to get to here is, what is the thing that if your partner could just have it their way, how do they need it? You know, is it actually that real service is almost like no service to you? Real service is, I didn't even really notice the waiter or waitress. The food just arrived at the right time and they were almost innocuous. They didn't even insert themselves into our evening. Someone else, they actually want them to be part of the evening. They helped you choose them. Hey, what's the best thing on the menu? Hey, what wine would you pair with this? You know, how locally grown is this produce? Is it organic? What's the history of the animal if I'm going to eat it? Right? Different things. So it's that you need to find out for your partner. You need to find out what those vehicles, we may all have, you know, the human givens approach. We have the 7 human needs, right? We all need to learn. We all need to have privacy. We all need to have shelter, support, and so on, right? We have those same needs, but the way that they are refracted in us and are prioritized can be completely different. So if you take nothing from this video, it's have the curiosity about the nuance and have the humility to ask, right? hey, last week I bought that present for you. Just be honest with me 100%. How much did that fill your cup? You thanked me for it. I felt good about it. It doesn't matter whether it's a 2 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10. I want to know you and I want to get out of my own way. And even if you tell me it's a 2 out of 10, and even if authentically I feel a little bit disappointed or I feel some shame come up, actually in the bigger scheme of things, I want to know so I don't just keep buying you 2 out of 10 presents and wondering why it's not occurring to you as a 9 out of 10, right? Similarly, when I go to touch you, does it feel good that I put my hand on your back? Is it something else that you actually need? Does it feel reassuring when I hold my hand, when maybe reassurance for you looks like, you need to touch me in the neck? Let's find out those things about each other, because they are beautiful and precious, and it actually doesn't take you any more effort to do a thing if you just didn't actually know that you weren't doing it, right? So it's like permission to have the full reveal and the full information. So if you like what you're hearing here, I want to invite you to download the Real Freedom Guide, because this is my guide to being more authentically you. And what I'm really talking about here is how can we authentically meet each other's needs? And part of that is how can you also authentically be yourself? So click the first link, it'll be beneath this video. The Real Freedom Guide gets delivered to your inbox. It's good material. This is not like a superficial download. This is like real stuff that took me a while to write. I think you'll like it. I'd love for you to download it. And in the meantime, if you haven't, boom, hit the like button, help me out here on the channel. Thanks for watching this far. I would love for you to subscribe. I release at least 2 videos every week on relationships, dating, authenticity, and personal growth. I'd love for you to be part of this journey with us. And as always, I'm Jack. Thanks for being here.